Hey, what's going on, guys, and welcome to 2020. With a new year and a new decade among us, a lot of us have a lot of goals that we have in mind, or dare I call them resolutions. These goals may surround several pillars of our lives, but today I'm going to talk about how you can crush your financial goals in 2020. Now, my first couple of tips are going to be just general tips around creating really good structured goals. My first tip is that your goals need to be smart. And what I mean by that is that they don't need to be intelligent goals. What I mean is the acronym SMART. Each one of those letters represents something. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail around this. There are several other videos that talk specifically about smart goal setting, but I'm going to give you a general overview. The S stands for a specific goal. You want to make sure that your goals are specific. So for instance, if you want to raise your income by $5,000, you don't just want to say something as simple as, I want to make more money. That is not specific enough. That is a dream, not a goal. This goal must also be easily measurable. So in our previous example, we talked about wanting a $5,000 raise. Now, that is specific and it's measurable, because if 6 months down the road, you get a raise for $2,500, you know that you're halfway there to your $5,000 goal. You also want to make sure that your goals are achievable. So $5,000 is a pretty achievable sum of money. But if your goal was to make $20 billion, then that is probably something that is not possible, or at least not very achievable within a short amount of time frame. And to me, the most important piece is that your goals need to be relevant to your life. So for instance, if you really wanted to get that $5,000 raise, you want to make sure that that $5,000 will impact your life in a way that you want. For instance, maybe it might give you additional freedom. Maybe that extra $5,000 will help you reach retirement a couple of years sooner. Make sure that whatever the reason is, that it's relevant and important to you. And last but not least, you want to make sure that all of your goals are time bound. So for instance, once again, let's go back to our example of making $5,000. Well, we didn't really set a limit to begin with. Do we want to make that $5,000 in 10 years, 20 years, 1 year? Let's make sure that we have a goal and a specific expiration date for that goal. Even if you don't hit that specific timeline, at least you have a way to more accurately measure and keep track of your progress. So that covers what a SMART goal is. The other thing that I find really useful around creating goals is to make sure that you write them down. So if you have a notebook or something that you keep by your nightstand or carry with you every day, even if it's a scrap of paper that you carry around in your wallet, as long as you see it every so often, I think it's important. And studies have shown that if you write down your goals, you're more likely to actually accomplish them, especially if you write them down with some kind of plan of action. And for those of you that have spouses or live with a significant other, it's also pretty important, especially when it comes to finances, to be on the same page with them. You don't want to show up one day wanting to get out of debt and all of a sudden you sold your wife's car and you didn't let her know. So just make sure that whatever it is that your goals are, that you are also sharing those goals with your spouse or significant other. Now, let's get specific with all these financial goals. Now, typically when you're talking about finances, there are two sides to the equation. There's the income side and then there's the expense side. Let's tackle income first. Now, the neat thing about income is that there's really no limit. You can make as much money as your skills can possibly get you. So what I would recommend for that is to try to pick up new skills that you believe can either get you a raise at work or will teach you a skill to be able to create side income. And we live in a day and age where you can learn a lot of things online for pretty inexpensively. For instance, you could go to Skillshare.com if you have interest in things like videography or photography or anything of the sort, social media, digital marketing. You'll probably find a course there where you could actually use those skills to create extra income for yourself. For those of you that have any interest in programming or DevOps or NetOps, whatever the case may be, you can try to learn all of that stuff online without having to actually go to a traditional classroom. In fact, if you go to codeacademy.com, you'll find a pretty inexpensive way for you to start learning those very, very valuable skills. And of course, last but not least is YouTube. There's a lot of content out there on YouTube or on other video sharing platforms where you could learn quite a lot about pretty much everything. It's really great that we live in a day and age where we have so many people that are sharing their knowledge and skills pretty much for free. The next tip is learning to live below your means using an app. There are plenty of really good apps out there specifically around budgeting. My favorite is YNAB, or You Need a Budget. This app allows you to integrate with all of your different bank accounts, your different credit cards, your savings accounts, and it allows you to easily categorize all of your different expenses from month to month. It is really important for everybody to have a written budget at the beginning of every month so that you can tell pretty much every dollar where to go. Without this budget, pretty much all of the other financial goals could pretty much be compromised. You must know where your money is going. If not, you're going to be wondering where it went. The next tip is to cut back spending on categories that you don't find value. Now, a lot of people don't want to bring up the word budget, and that's because usually it's associated to limiting yourself. But the way that I like to see a budget is it gives you permission to be able to spend on things that you do enjoy, things that you like to do, but it allows you to not spend money on things that you don't necessarily need or want or find value in. Now, let me give you an example. If you're the kind of person that doesn't care about going out to have a drink of coffee, then that is obviously something that you do not prioritize. You do not value that. So you make coffee at home, and instead you use that money towards other expenses that you like. So for example, if you want to get a subscription to Disney Plus or Netflix, you can reallocate that money to those subscriptions because you find value in those subscriptions. So it doesn't really matter what categories these are, they're completely up to you. Even in this example, if those things were reversed, whatever takes priority for you, takes priority for you. The point is that you want your budget to represent what you prioritize, and don't spend money on those things that you don't find happiness in. Now that you got your budgeting under control, you can then move on to starting your emergency fund. Now, if you're in a situation where you are still in debt, meaning consumer debt, everything except your house, what I usually follow is Dave Ramsey's recommendation, which is to just have $1,000 in a savings account in case shit hits the fan. Now, $1,000 might not seem like a lot, and really, it's not a lot. It'll only cover sort of just basic emergencies, but it's more than a lot of people actually have saved up. Really, what that $1,000 is meant to do is just be a small buffer for you while you work on getting out of debt. Now, once you're completely out of debt, besides your home, you want to then bump up that emergency fund from $1,000 to anywhere from 3 to 6 months of expenses. Now, that's up to you. I personally wouldn't do more than 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. Anything above that, I would say you should probably be investing or saving towards large purchases like a car, furniture, or down payment for a house. Now, with all that newfound income, lowering your expenses, having a budget, and having an emergency fund, if you had debt, I would highly recommend that you follow one of two methods to get rid of that debt. The first method that's coined by Dave Ramsey is personally the method that I found most useful. It's a method that relies mostly on the psychological aspect of money. This is called the debt snowball. Now, pretty much the way the debt snowball works is you organize all of your consumer debt from smallest to largest, and you pay off the smallest debt first. Once you pay that off, you feel good about it, crossing that off. You take that money that you were putting towards that small debt and you roll it into the next largest debt. And then you keep on crossing them out, and as you go, you simply add that payment to your next payment, to your next payment, and the ball keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. That, therefore, it's called a debt snowball. Because by the time you go towards your largest debt, that snowball is actually quite large. Now, if you want to do this mathematically correct, then I would recommend following the debt avalanche, which is to get all of your debts and organize them from the highest interest rate to the lowest interest rate, and then pay off the highest interest rate first, and then start paying off some of the lower interest rates. But personally, I really like using the debt snowball because psychologically, it just felt so good scratching off a debt every time I paid one off. And it gave me that momentum to keep going and paying off the rest. That might be different for you. Now this one is completely optional and completely goes against my roots of being a gun-ho Dave Ramsey follower. I would recommend for you to go out there and research certain types of credit cards that would be advantageous to you. Now, originally, I was one of those people that got all the credit cards, paid them off, and cut them up. But what I ended up finding is that what Dave Ramsey says is after a couple of months, your credit score will fall to a 0 or undeterminable credit score. However, for both my wife and I, this wasn't the case. What we ended up finding is our credit scores pretty much remained about the same, which was actually good news for me, not as good news for my wife, who had a slightly lower credit score. So the point is, in our situation, our credit score was pretty much staying the same and never going down to 0. So we figured that if we were going to have a credit score, we would much rather have a better credit score so we can get better rates on our mortgage in the future. Now, one thing that I would recommend around credit cards is to be very intentional with your credit cards. Pretty much 95% of the credit cards out there are not even worth having. I really look forward to actually doing more videos on credit cards in the future and which of the ones I find advantageous. I feel like a good place to start would be to do the Chase Freedom or the Chase Freedom Unlimited. If you're interested in that, you can go ahead and find the links for that in the description below. Now, the reason why I find them to be advantageous is because they offer you points. Now, these points allow you to redeem them towards either cash back or travel. Now, I want to throw this disclaimer out there. You need to really know yourself well before applying to credit cards. What I mean by that is, although some of these credit cards may have perks and benefits, anytime you pay any interest on these credit cards that carry a balance, you are pretty much negating, or I should say, you are negating all of the benefits of that card. So you really have to know yourself whether or not you're actually going to maintain the budget well and you're actually going to pay off the credit card balance every single month. If you're not going to do that, I would highly recommend that you stay away from credit cards. Now let's start talking about investing. If your company has a 401k match, I would always recommend that you take that free money. This is a mistake that I made early on in my career where I was still in debt and I did not claim my 4.5% match through my 401k. And this was again through the advice of Dave Ramsey. And I see where he's coming from, but in my opinion, it's really hard to say no to free money. Now today, my opinion on that has completely changed. I really feel that if you are in debt today, any type of consumer debt, and your employer offers you a 401k match, you should contribute up to that match to take advantage of that free money. Never say no to free money. Now, once you are actually out of debt, this is where the fun really begins and you start accumulating money towards your wealth and retirement. Here, I would recommend that you take advantage of all of the tax advantage investment vehicles as you can. The most common one is a 401k that you're offered through your employer if you are employed. The second most common is an individual retirement account or an IRA, which you can open through a broker of your choice. In my opinion, the best brokerage out there right now is M1 Finance. With M1 Finance, you can invest in pretty much anything that you want, from stocks to bonds to index funds. In my opinion, Vanguard holds some of the best index funds and ETFs around. There are plenty of studies that show that low-cost index funds and ETFs outperform even the best actively managed mutual funds. Again, at this point, I would highly recommend that you contribute 15% of your gross income. Now, if 15% just seems a little bit too high for you right now, I would recommend to start with as little as 5% and bump that up 1% every month. What you're going to find is that you're really not going to miss that money because you're gradually getting and bumping yourself up to that 15%. Now, probably my number one tip here is to completely automate your investing. You want to make sure that your investments are being done automatically without you having to lift a finger. It's one less thing that you have to worry about, and it's just completely free. Once again, if you're interested in starting a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, I would highly recommend to check out M1 Finance. The links for that are in the description below. One last piece of advice for investing is keep in mind that expenses are the enemy. You want to make sure that whatever brokerage account that you're using, whatever index funds or mutual funds that you might be using, make sure that they have very low expenses. There's no reason why you should be paying to this day and age for any trade fees. All of the ETFs and index funds that I hold today in my accounts are just 0.1% in expense ratio. You want to make sure that you're keeping your expenses as low as possible, not just with the brokerage account that you use, but also with the individual index funds. Now, I know that's a pretty long list of things to help you accomplish your goals for this year, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section below. What are your guys' goals for this year, financial or otherwise? I'd really be curious to know. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you soon.